Welcome, everybody, to another episode of 100 Yards of Football. This is the NFL edition, and I'm Harper LeBel, along with Vincent Turner, our host, and Logan Landers, our producer/engineer. We're going to talk a little bit about this week's Week 10 action with the National Football League. But before we do, Vincent, Week 9 had a lot of thrilling play in it, right? We got an undefeated team that stays undefeated. You can't pop the champagne yet if you're a Miami Dolphin celebrating the 1972 year because Kansas City continues to roll. Vincent, what are your thoughts about the Kansas City Chiefs? They're not dominating, but they're winning. You can't beat them no matter whether you go to overtime or whether it's in regulation. They're just better than you are, right?
Last time we had an undefeated team, the only undefeated team in the National Football League history was the Miami Dolphins. And they didn't win pretty either. But when it was all said and done, they ended up, I want to say 17-0. That's when I'm looking at the Kansas City Chiefs. They still finding a way to win. And that's with injuries. Now with their quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, banged up, this is a Chiefs team that just going. And DeAndre Hopkins looked real well in the Chiefs uniform this past Monday night. In the Dallas Cowboys, drama's always going to really stay in Jerry's world. Going to be really fascinating to see Cooper Rush under the center against the Eagles this Sunday. And then finally, the Detroit Lions. I told you last week, Harper, Motown is booking them reservations in New Orleans. Barry Gordy and the Temptations, the Motor City is coming. Mr. Bite Your Kneecap Off, Mr. Dan Campbell, you're doing a hell of a job, brother. Back to you, Harper.
Yep, and we'll talk about them in just a minute. They are doing things in front of the table and behind the table that are very impressive. Well, let's look at some of the action for this week. Week 9 was great. We hope you enjoyed it. Week 10 starts this time with a Thursday night game where Cincinnati and their 4-5 record, which may not be impressive, but they've won 3 of the last 4. The Bengals are 4-5. They'll be traveling to Baltimore at M&T Bank Stadium to take on the 6-3 Ravens. Vincent, there are times where I think the Ravens are the best team in the league. They can do everything. And then there are times where I go, what are they doing? If I'm a Raven fan, which one are you expecting to see this Thursday night on the game of the week, the prime game at 8:15?
You bring up good points. I'm thinking just like you are. When I look at Baltimore, one game I'm saying, man, this team is Super Bowl ready. Lamar Jackson playing at a high level. I love their defense. Marlon Humphrey, Cal Van Noy. I mean, you got to say, hey, this is a team that can win it all. Last week against Denver, they had a very impressive 41-10 victory. Then the previous week, they lose to Cleveland. But the one key to their season is that I think what's going to be really serious for them, just keep getting the ball to the young man from Alabama, Derrick Henry. He's on pace to have 2,000 yards. I think last week he got over 20 touches in the game, and you saw what happened. They easily defeated Denver 41-10. Now to the Cincinnati Bengals. They are the best 4-5 team in the league. Joe Burrow, regardless of what they're saying in Cincinnati, has played lights out. He's played really good football, man, to an MVP level over the last 2 weeks. They really look really good against the Raiders last week and winning 41-24. And Trey Hendricks, the defensive end, let's put some respect on his name today. 11 sacks for the year. That's a very good Cincinnati Bengals team. They just had some tough losses, but that's going to be a real good football game on Thursday night. I'm looking forward to it. Back to you, Harper.
Yeah, Trey Hendrickson with 11. They've got 17 as a team, and he's got 11 of them. So you slow him down. You're going to have to chip him. You're going to have to double team him at one point or slide away from him. That's going to ruin your quarterback, which, by the way, Lamar Jackson well, we'll talk about him in just a second. But before we do, let's stay with the Cincinnati Bengals. And Joe Burrow is 70%. He's got 2,244 yards, maybe a little bit down compared to where he's been in the past. 20 touchdowns, though, 4 interceptions. He's been sacked 20 times. That's one of the differences. And Cincinnati can't win at home. They had 2 home preseason games. They didn't win either of those, and they're winless at home right now. So I think that they're going to be a force to reckon with. They're number 7 overall in their passing game, at least as far as the league comparison goes, 236 yards a game. They only rush for 94. So Joe Mixon is gone, but Chase Brown has 479 yards. Derrick Henry had that 5 weeks ago, but he's got 4 touchdowns. And Jamar Chase, 55 receptions, 717 yards for him. He has 7 touchdowns. Lamar Jackson is just killing it right now. They're number 3 in the league in passing. They're obviously number 1 with 191 yards rushing. They're number 2 scoring wise. They average 32 points a ball game. Their defense is a little suspect. They give up 24 points a game. That's in the middle third, bottom portion of that. They're 23rd overall in the league. Their defense has 28 sacks. You mentioned Kyle Van Noy. He's got 7 of those. So it's an even distribution. They have a very good front, and they will put pressure on the quarterback. They're very good at doing that. You mentioned Derrick Henry. He has 1,052 yards already, 6.3 yards per carry. Just feed him the ball and give it to him again. All right, on third down, go short. Then give it to him again, and it'll be 2nd and 4. You do it every time. 11 touchdowns for him. He's amazing. So great game. I'm looking forward to seeing it tomorrow night. That's when Cincinnati and the Bengals take on the Ravens in Baltimore. Our second game, it's a Sunday game. Are you a little surprised, Vincent, that Pittsburgh is 6-2 right now with the quarterback situation that they had? We're not sure about their running game. Who's going to throw the ball? How are they going to do it? They're 6-2 right now. They're tied with the Ravens, technically speaking, but they have 1 game less. They had a bye already, but at 6-2, they're in first place. But they're going against a 7-2 Washington Commanders. This is a very interesting football game, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's what time is it? At 1 o'clock on CBS on Sunday.
You could say surprises for both teams, really. I'm going to start with Pittsburgh. All through in the season, I kept saying to myself, Justin Fields is playing well. Justin Fields is playing well. But I kept saying to myself, he's playing well enough for Pittsburgh to win because they got an outstanding defense. They got the best defensive player in the game in T.J. Watt. But when they put Russell Wilson under center, I really started to have reservation because I saying, has Russ lost it a little bit? But what he's done, man, he's put the deep ball in their offense. And their offense is playing at a high level to a point that, hey, the Steelers will start looking like them Steeler teams of the old with him under center. Look how George Pickens has picked this game up on the outside, the wide receiver position. And now they inquire Mike Williams from the Jets. Pittsburgh is going to be a very serious team in that division in the AFC North. Then you're looking at the Washington Commanders. Can you honestly, Harper, say that you thought the Commanders would be 7-2 this year? New ownership, and then they hired Dan Quinn as a coach. He had a great time as a defensive coordinator with the Cowboys, and I thought he did a decent job in here in Atlanta. He lost the football team a little bit, but remember, he got the Falcons to the Super Bowl. And what they've done this year is no question about it. They've been the biggest surprise in the league. With a rookie quarterback in Jaden Daniels, I didn't see Jaden Daniels playing this well. Kudos to the OC Cliff Kingsbury. With your good looks, you got Jaden Daniels playing at a high level. And then think about Luke McCaffrey. We talk about his brother all the time in San Francisco. He's become a pretty good football player. And now they acquired Marshawn Lattimore from the Saints to go with their defense. Oh, yeah. New owner Josh Allen, you got a football team, man. The Commanders are very serious. They're going to be battling for the NFC East. That's a good football team, man. Back to you.
Yeah, I think the Commanders, and I'm going to use a slogan that you've probably heard before, but they're playing with house money right now. They're way ahead of schedule. They picked number 2 in the draft, guys, and they had, 11 different picks. They were they were dumping players to get draft picks, and knowing full well that it's going to take a couple of years to rebuild, to allow those guys to mature and to get a chance to play, and have Jaden Daniels. What's he got? 9 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. That's not exceptional. We just said that Burrow's got over 20. Lamar Jackson has 20. So he's got half of that. But you know what? It doesn't matter because they got 7 wins. They haven't had 7 wins in the last 2 years. So kudos to everything that's going on with the Commanders right now. Very impressed with what they've been able to do. Let's look at a couple of their numbers. They're 11th in the league throwing the ball. They're number 3 rushing it. Brian Robinson's amazing. He's got 461 yards. You wouldn't think that that's a big deal, but guess who also has 459 yards and 5.6 per carry? That's our quarterback, Jaden Daniels. So the two of them together, they're at over 900 yards between the two of them, and Derrick Henry has 1,000. So just look at the comparison, and it makes defenses do things differently. If you have to guard the quarterback as well in the run game, that means you have to take one guy out of place. And right now, the Commanders have taken advantage of that situation. Austin Eckler, he's also got 282 yards. You throw him in, 5.6 yards per carry. Big offensive line. They're able to move the line of scrimmage, and that's why they're doing as well as they are. Number 3 overall in the run game. They're third in scoring, too. When they get the ball in the red zone, guess what? They at least get 3, and they're trying to get 7 every stinking time. They give up 21 points a game. That's not in the top 10. It's 11th. So very impressed. But if you look at Pittsburgh on the other side of the ball, their defense, they're number 2 in the league in terms of giving up points. They average giving up 14 points a game, and they're 13th in the league offensively in terms of their scoring. And I think Russell Wilson, part of the reason I think they waited so long and put Justin Fields in for 4, 5, 6 games is they wanted to make sure Russell was 100%, not 90, not 75. And when you've got a bad calf and you got to plant and throw, you never know if you're going to pull it again. So I think they waited a little bit longer. They got 2 quarterbacks. They used them both. They realized one was hurt. They used the other one and let Justin be the man for a little while. And he was in a position where they just don't lose a game for us. Our defense is really good. Just give it to Najee. Give it to Najee again. We'll get the ball down the field. But Russell, his ability to buy time when he's 100%, he's not a rookie anymore. He's not in his Super Bowl years with the Seahawks, but his wisdom is something that I think is going to be very advantageous for Pittsburgh. He's going to move around in the pocket, and then he's going to go deep like he has for his whole career and make a big play. As you said, Vincent, his ability to throw the ball deep, that is exceptional. He looks like he's deep in the hole in left field as a shortstop, ready to throw the ball over to first base. And by the way, he was a very good baseball player when he was at Wisconsin. So we'll get to see that again. And as Pittsburgh flies with Russell Wilson, that division is up for grabs because Baltimore is excellent. We'll see if Cincinnati has what it takes. We know Cleveland is technically given up, but it should be a 3-team race throughout the rest of the year. Let's go to the NFC East. And a game that I think will have a lot more media importance because of what's going on in Big D. Vincent, the 6-2 Eagles have every reason in the world to just make this a simple win. But with what's going on in Dallas, you never know what's going to happen. They may end up pulling out a game, but I don't know. With all the injuries that they have, it'll be very tough. The Cowboys are 3-5. Hosting that game is at 4:25 on CBS.
Being a Cowboys fan for, I want to say, all my life since I was 6 years old. I've seen the Cowboys have highs. I've seen the Cowboys have lows. I've experienced as a fan the 3 Super Bowls in the mid-'90s under Jimmy Johnson, the great days of Tom Landry. But I would say this. Right now, it's becoming real dangerous in where this organization is going. Signing Dak Prescott to a lot of money, I wasn't a component of that. You had to give CD Lamb, I guess, his money. But right now, you salary cap striking because right now, you know yourself, Harper. You playing in the league for 11 years. The game is very simple. If you don't have players, you're not going to be a very good football team. Dallas doesn't have a lot of good players. And what's really amazing, and I go back and I tell this story and I'll be staying very intimate. When Dallas was successful in the Jimmy Johnson era, they were strong on the defensive line. Actually, they were strong on both lines of the scrimmage. And what I'm seeing this past Sunday, can you tell me what guy started for Dallas on the D-line? Non-factor.
Just Martin. He's the only one left. Yeah, all the studs that they've had for years. Martin's the only one that remains, in my opinion. Go ahead.
Okay, and then you're looking at where they at now. Cooper Rush gets his chance. Decent quarterback. I'd rather see Trey Lance because we traded for him a former first round pick. But it's a lot of things going on in Dallas. Mike McCartney, I feel for him. Hands are tied because you only can coach what you have on the field. You got Michael Parsons, your best defensive player that's out. I don't even know if you sign him to a lot of money because the Cowboys need players. Now to the Eagles. I think a Super Bowl team. Nick Sirianni. 1 minute he's under heat. The next minute he's a star in Philadelphia. That's 1 minute he's under heat. Now he's a star. This is a different Philadelphia Eagles team. They got the best running back outside Christian McCaffrey in the game in Saquon Barkley. If you're talking about a fit, a player that was a perfect fit for the organization, Saquon Barkley is that guy. Look what he's doing on the field. You can give us his numbers, Harper, but he's a guy that's a difference maker. And he's a guy that can put you over the top. And the Eagles are playing better defense. Kudos to the boys from Bulldog Nation. Nakobe Dean is playing well now. Jalen Carter is playing well now. Jordan Davis is playing well now. And Nolan Smith is playing well now. This is a very good football team, and I expect the Eagles are going to roll on Sunday, coming to Big D. Back to you, Harper.
Well, you said over the top. Can that be forward and or backwards with Saquon? Would you see when he leaps over players and he's backwards and he still lands and he gets a first down? Unbelievable how athletic he is, how powerful he is. They've got the number 2 rushing game in the league at 174 yards, only 202 in the air, but they're 24 points, is 11th in the league right now in terms of scoring, and they're in the top 10 defensively with 19. Saquon Barkley has 925 yards. He has 6 touchdowns. He's second in the league right now. He's just he's killing it. But I think Jalen Hurts is playing with a lot more comfort in him. Remember last year about this time they started having injuries. They were way ahead of everybody else. The next thing you know, they lose a player, and then they lose a game. 10 touchdowns, 4 interceptions for him, which isn't, earth shattering. It's not that big a deal. But guess what? They're winning games. They're winning the games that they should. Cooper Rush, I don't know what to tell you, my friend. I don't know what to tell you because I don't know how much time you're going to have to throw. People are going to see what you do, and they're going to scout and defend against you. 56%. He's only got 167 yards. He's played in 4 games, but 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Rico Dowdle, no touchdowns for him on the ground, 4.5 yards per carry. Dallas is 31st out of 32 teams in the league at 82 yards a ball game. They're 20th in scoring. Their defense is 31st. When's the last time that we said there's only one team in the league that gives up more points than the Dallas Cowboys? So you never know what can happen. I would treat this like a Thursday Thanksgiving Day game where you don't know what you're going to get. You could just get the best that you get out of a team. I'm not so sure. There's a lot of drama going on in Dallas. We'll move on as well. Dallas at home against the division rival Philadelphia Eagles. That game is at 4:25. Next game is going to be the New York Jets, 3-6. They're going to be going to Arizona. Vincent, when's the last time we said that the Arizona Cardinals were in first place at the NFC West at 5-4?
Put respect on Jonathan Gannon's name, the head coach. Very impressive what the Cardinals have done this year. Last week, they had a very impressive 29-9 win over the Chicago Bears. Kyler Murray only threw for 154 yards, but he's a guy, for some reasons, making plays at the right time for that football team. Marvin Harrison Jr. is what we thought he was going to be. He's played pretty solid this year. But the guy that's impressed me the most has been the running back, James Conner. Had 107 yards last week. He's a guy. Remember, when he got to the Cardinals, we didn't even think about the Cardinals being a very physical football team running the football. But James Conner is that guy, and he's a cancer survivor. I got a lot of respect for him. I love him as a football player. And defensively, the Cardinals are playing defense out there. L.J. Carrier, Brutal Baker, Xavier Collins. See, them names we don't even hear about. Sean Murray Bunting and Darius Robinson, the rookie out of Missouri. That's a good football team. Now to the Jets. New York, on Broadway with Aaron Rodgers. They 3-6 on the year. Had a big win over Houston. A lot of people out of New York say the story is not ended. The book is not finna close. The Jets still think they got a chance to really become a really mainstay in the AFC East. Be honest, Aaron Rodgers played pretty well last time out against Houston in that 21-13 win. Devontae Adams had almost close to 100 yards. And Garrett Wilson is starting to play real well at the position. This is a Jets team that I wouldn't be surprised, Harper. They go on a little run, but it got to start in Arizona on Sunday. Back to you, Harper.
Yeah, it's going to be kind of tough. I think Arizona, they remind me of a team. When I first moved to Atlanta, the baseball Braves had a bunch of names that have gone on to be Hall of Famers, but nobody knew anything about them. If you weren't in Atlanta, you didn't know who Mark Lemke was. You didn't know who was playing left field for him. You didn't have any idea. You may have heard of Otis Nixon before, but who are these guys? And the year before, they finished worst in the division. They lost, right? And then this following year, 91, the game that they would lose the year before, 3-2, they would win 3-2. And I think Arizona's learning to win. They don't have the best stats in the league, but they're playing well together. You mentioned the running game. When you watch a guy run and he bounces off two people and then still falls forward for an extra 1 or 2 more yards, I'll tell you what, if I'm an offensive lineman, a tight end, a running back, a wide receiver, I'm going to block for that guy a little bit harder. I want to see him spring one. That's what you do. And so I think they're seeing little bits and pieces of that where even from a coaching perspective, come on, guys, I'm telling you what, you are better than you think you are. Just keep playing hard. Play harder than the other guy does, and you're going to see some really good things happen. And at 5-4, okay, but they're in first place at 5-4. So good for Arizona, what they've been doing. You mentioned some of the numbers. Kyler Murray, he's completing 2 out of 3 passes. He's got 1,792 yards, 11 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions. So he's protecting the ball better than he has. James Conner, you mentioned him, 664 yards, 4.5 rushing. Well, guess who also is rushing the ball? Kyler Murray. It's like we talked about just a little while ago. There are some things that happen. What Army is doing, for example, I'm going to hand it off, and then I'm going to keep it myself from a quarterback perspective. Kyler Murray is averaging 8.1 yards every time he goes across the line of scrimmage. RPO is working for them. He's got 2 touchdowns as well. Trey McBride, shout out to my Colorado State alumni. Trey is their leading receiver, 481 yards and 45 receptions for him. He's averaging a little bit more than 10 yards a carry. So I'm very impressed with Arizona. Things could turn sour for them, and they could end up being 9 or 10 and 6 going into the last week of the season. We'll see. But in the meanwhile, that game is at 4:25. It's on CBS. The Jets visit Arizona at State Farm Arena. The last game that we're going to look at, Detroit at 7-1 goes to Houston. Detroit's doing everything right, it seems, including a trade that they just made with Cleveland to get Zadarius Smith to replace Aiden Hutchinson's injury. Now, Aiden might be available to play in the playoffs. There are people that are whispering, oh, he'll be ready for the Super Bowl. Well, we don't know if he will or not, but the fact that they need another player and they ended up making a trade. Granted, we don't know the contract value and what it's going to do to affect the cap to re-sign him and bring him back. But I think they made a great move. The 7-1 Detroit Lions go to 6-3 Houston. 6-3 Houston will be there at NRG Stadium. Vincent, your thoughts on this one?
I got to give Detroit and the city of Detroit a lot of love today. Remember when Dan Campbell had his press conference and he said that he was going to have a team that's going to be biting kneecaps off. I think that was his correct words.
Yep.
Think about all that came behind that, how much flack he came behind that. I heard people saying he was incumbent. I heard people saying he was crazy. I heard people say, why would the Lions hire him as a football coach? But see, what people didn't understand, when Dan Campbell was hired, they brought over a very talented GM from the Rams, Brad Holmes, who's part of a Super Bowl organization. And I always look at how they started sending, how they draft. Aiden Hutchinson, Jameis Williams, Amon St. Brown, Brian Branch out of Sandy Creek, down there in Fayetteville, Georgia. Teron Arnold, Jamel Gibbs. And you put that with a guy that had a chip on his shoulder, the guy out of the University of California, who the Rams let go, who's the #1 overall pick in Jared Goff. That kind of measures success. What I'm impressed about Detroit most of all is how they winning games, but the depth they have. They have so many good football players, Harper. Jack Campbell, who they drafted, Sam Laporta drafted. They have drafted good football players that are starting, and they've brought in the right quality type of veterans to fit what they're doing. And they're getting excellent coaching. Aaron Glenn, Texas A&M in the house, formerly of the New York Jets. You're doing an outstanding job on the defensive side of the ball. And even though they lost Aiden Hutchinson, I think they're going to be all right, man. And they winning in so many impressive ways. They went on the road and beat Green Bay. They went on the road and destroyed Dallas. Now they're going to Houston. I wouldn't expect no other. This is a really good football team that can easily, right now, I would say it's the favorite coming out of the NFC going to the Super Bowl. Now to the Houston Texans. You're 6-3. C.J. Stroud has played well at certain times. He's had his points. They lose Stephon Diggs. I don't know if that's going to hurt their football team. He tore his ACL. But Nico Collins is supposed to be returning. Joe Mixon has played really well for him this year, coming over from Cincinnati. And Will Anderson is who we thought he was going to be. He's a Pro Bowl player. And D'Amico Ryans has did an outstanding job. I think it's a much bigger game for Houston, because if I'm looking at Houston and I'm thinking as them as an organization, I'm playing the Lions, I'm looking at this might be a Super Bowl preview. That's how serious I think this game is going to be. And it's going to be very enjoyable on Sunday. Back to you, Harper.
Yeah, CJ's had a good year. 11 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, but he's been sacked 30 times already. That was an interesting stat that really it stuck out to me, is that maybe the offensive line isn't doing a great job of protecting him. That, or he's just holding on to the ball a little bit too long. You won't be able to do that against Detroit. I think the Lions took advantage of everything that they could. Chip on their shoulder last week. I don't care if it's rain or sleet or snow. The postman always delivers. And Detroit ended up delivering in Green Bay in that storm that they had. And they looked easy, like they were doing it without a whole lot of effort. That's the thing that I think is most interesting. They play hard. They play like their hair is on fire. They play like their coach with a real disposition. You know what I mean? They're a little angry. They'll play with class, but they're there to beat you. And they certainly did that. They've got 3 games against AFC Central opponents. They've got this one against the Texans. They play Jacksonville and then Indianapolis before they get back into conference play. They'll play Chicago and Green Bay at the end of this month. But Detroit is for real. All the reasons. Their passing game is fantastic. They're number 6 rushing the ball. The combination with Gibbs and Montgomery, they're fantastic. So, and you get the ball to Laporta or Amon St. Brown. Goodness gracious. Who do you not get the ball to with the Lions on offense? So it'll be a very interesting game. The 7-1 Lions, as we mentioned, go to 6-3 Houston. That game is the Sunday night NBC game of the week. So you'll get a chance to see that one later on in the evening. Vincent, any final thoughts before we go? A lot of great games this week, a lot of reason to stick around and watch the NFL.
Got to be impressed with what they're doing in the Motor City up there in Detroit. Got to be impressed with Dan Campbell. Aaron Glenn is out as a defensive coordinator. I'm just really surprised and really impressed at how they have drafted. They have drafted, I'm going to say it one more time, some good football players that are contributing. Brian Branch, the strong safety, is one of the best in the game. Teron Arnold, who they took in the first round of Alabama, is playing at a level that we all thought he would be at the cornerback position. Sam Laporta. Now, that was a guy I didn't think that was that good. I know he was good, but coming out of the University of Iowa, I made a mistake with all the great tight ends they've had come out of that school. And Jack Campbell, another guy out of Iowa, has played real well. They have drafted good football players on both sides of the ball. And Dan Campbell, I can say this, I think everybody in the league respects him now. Back to you, Harper.
Yeah, they've made some amazing choices. Everyone on their offensive line, Tyler Decker, Glasnow, Ragnow, Zeidler, and Penny Sewell's another number 1, right? They're loaded with number 1s on the offensive line. And guess what? If you can protect your quarterback and you can push just a little bit, good things happen. So Detroit's still on the rise. Even though they played in the NFC Championship last year, they've only gotten better, at least in my opinion, they have. With that being said, we just want to say there's a lot of great games. We hope you enjoy them. They start on Thursday with Cincinnati going to Baltimore, and it'll end on Monday evening. But in between, you'll have plenty of action with the National Football League that you can watch. So we want to thank you on behalf of Vincent Turner, Logan Landers, our engineer and producer. I'm Harper LeBel. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, to another episode of the NFL version of 100 Yards of Football. Have a fantastic day, everybody. We'll see you soon.